Glastonbury. Let's talk about this with Gideon Falter. He's Chief Executive at the Campaign Against Antisemitism and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Gideon.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I mean, this was exactly what many people feared. And it seems to me that it's kind of a circular argument, isn't it? To me, the anti-Semitism contained in the decisions at the BBC to go, well, we're quite happy to broadcast the Bob Vylan performance live, even though clearly high risk, given things that the lead singer, Bobby Vylan, had already said. But also, we're not really that shocked or horrified by chants of death, death to the IDF, and thousands of people singing along. We're not that bothered about it, because their own anti-Semitism meant they didn't really see that that was a problem. And what a surprise. You normalise that, and then you see a spike in anti-Semitic attacks and assaults and verbal abuse of Jewish people. It's entirely predicted and predictable.
It's completely predictable. We'll be posting on our social media in a few minutes just a clip of a couple of young people, probably early 20s, sitting on the tube, playing that exact clip at a Jewish woman. So there's a Jewish woman sitting on the tube, got their phone out, and it's shouting out, death, death to the IDF. And that is what you normalise. That is what you do. And the BBC, you know, you can't give them any credit anymore. You can't cut them any more slack than they've had. You know, if you look at the context in which they broadcast that, they'd just been caught red-handed paying a Hamas official's family for a documentary they then had to pull. Yeah. Their chair and director general had just been hauled in front of Parliament to answer questions. The culture secretary is saying, I want answers. And it comes up with Glastonbury. And Glastonbury's a festival which has been hurtling headlong down a particular path. And it wasn't so long ago they had Corbyn on, right to the height of the anti-Semitism scandal in Labour. And they say, okay, well, we're gonna platform Kneecap, and the BBC say, okay, fine, maybe we won't put that one on television. And they say, and we're also going to do Bob Vylan. And like you said, Bob Vylan's not exactly some kind of, meek, sort of act that you don't have to worry what he's going to say. He said some pretty bad stuff in the past, and he comes on, he starts chanting this chant completely predictably, and the BBC, with Tim Davie, the Director General, sitting there at Glastonbury at that very moment, everything's kicking off, and the BBC say, oh, no, that's perfectly fine to go out. And they don't cut it for, I think, another 5 hours that they take it off iPlayer. Yeah. It's absolutely horrendous, because it's not like, this is just yet another slip up where, the BBC's had one after another. But this is a symptom of this rot in our institutions, including the BBC, where they are just normalising this anti-Semitism. They're failing to stand up for Jews in this country. Yeah.
And the impact is, and people will say, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm concerned about the children in Gaza. I'm concerned about Palestinian people, concerned about the actions of the Israeli government or the Israeli army, the IDF. And that's what they say. And then the next day, some kids play that video about the IDF to a Jewish woman on a bus, and people don't think there is a clear link. By definition, holding any Jewish person anywhere in Britain, America, or anywhere else to account, or even an Israeli civilian to account for the actions of their soldiers or their government or the decisions of any policy on food aid for civilians in Gaza, by definition, that itself is anti-Semitic, because, oh, well, it's the Jews, isn't it? And that's the message that was sent out by the BBC, that view was normal and okay.
And that's exactly it. So many people watching this will be thinking it is so completely evident that, first of all, if you normalise this kind of thing on the BBC and also at these marches that we see through our streets, on our campuses, it's, even in our schools, in our NHS, if you allow this kind of hatred to go unchecked, it's going to lead to an uptick in hatred against the minority that's being targeted. And the second thing that's completely evident is, we've been hearing for ages people saying, oh, no, I don't hate Jews, I just hate Zionists. We did polling of the British Jewish community. 80% of British Jews say that they're Zionists, only 6% say they aren't Zionists. And so you've got basically these people walking around saying, oh, no, I don't hate Jews. I just hate maybe all but 6% of them. I mean, it's absolutely...
Well, they definitely hate me as well, because I'm a Zionist, but I keep getting people telling me this is an insult on you Zionists. I'm like, I don't think that's the insult you think it is. But there we are. Can I ask you about something else as well, which I think is interesting? Because I think an awful lot of this hatred of Israel and/or Jews has come about because of the Hamas incredibly successful propaganda campaign that we have seen over the last, oh goodness me, a couple of years now, where despite the fact that they, committed the atrocities of October the 7th, despite the fact that they put their own people into harm's way, despite the fact that they've said they would commit October the 7th, every single day of the week if they could, despite the fact they've got hostages still being starved. And we saw these horrific images of two hostages still being, was it 667 days now, still being held in the tunnels, one being forced to dig his own grave in the tunnel. I mean, absolutely horrific, evil. I mean, I use the word evil images, despite the fact that they could feed every single child in Gaza if they want to with their own stocks of food they've stolen, despite the fact they could have kept every single child and mum and woman safe in the tunnels if they'd chosen to, but they didn't. They wanted them to be in harm's way. Despite all of that, it's Israel that gets the blame all the time. And lots of the images that we've seen that promoted a lot of hate of Israel have been of starving children. Some of those are completely they're untrue. There are children who have congenital problems. One of the children who was on the front page of the newspapers was actually in Italy for the last few months being treated. So it's an absolute flown out by the IDF, by the way. So a complete lie. But Bild in Germany, a very, very, very prominent news publication, they have published a photograph of a Gaza photographer staging Hamas propaganda. Got an image. So a lot of those images we see with children leaning, looking desperate, beautiful little, children, big eyes, looking sunken cheeks, holding their pans, desperate for food, showing that the other side of the camera, completely fake imagery, completely fake. They're not crowding around food. It's an empty lorry. It's all being staged. A lot of these photographs have made it onto the front page of our newspapers. They're all over social media, and every time they are there, you get not just people on social media, but you get people like Keir Starmer and people like Donald Trump condemning the Israeli government for not getting food aid in. If there are children genuinely starving and really, really was a problem in Gaza, I'm assuming they wouldn't have to stage photographs of it because you just see it everywhere. What do you make of these staged photographs and the proof that they are happening?
I mean, this is the thing. I think that here in Britain, we've got to get our heads around a couple of things. Number one is that Hamas is brilliantly gifted at manipulating us. They say a picture speaks 1,000 words, and they are clearly, there is no, right. There is no mistaking the fact that Hamas controls what we see out of Gaza. And we don't know exactly what the situation is on the ground. I haven't been there. I don't know. But what we do know is that a lot of the information coming to us is being manipulated by people who have a particular genius for it. And by the way, Hamas, in publishing videos of hostages looking like Holocaust survivors, starving absolutely at death's door, Hamas does that proudly. Yeah. They are very proud of the starvation that they are inflicting on those hostages. So the first thing is to remember that what we're seeing out of Gaza is largely coming through the prism of Hamas. The second thing that we need to remember is that here in Britain, we can, our politicians can pontificate all they like, but the fact is Britain is not very relevant to what's happening all those thousands of miles. Recognising
Palestinian state and things, yes.
And we need to pay attention in this country to what is happening on our own doorstep. Yeah. And that's what things like today's report show us. There is a surge in hatred. Yeah. Our young people, if you look at what some of our young people believe, by the way, not just about Jews, if you look at what our young people believe, they are being radicalized beneath our very noses to believe really dangerous things, crazy things. And if you look at who's perpetrating the anti-Semitic incidents and you start drilling down into it, you start to get a picture. Our young people are no longer immune to hatred in the way we thought. We always thought this was the anti-racist generation.
They all think they're the nice people, but they don't realise. Now, Gideon, I wish we had longer. I have to let it go. The Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Antisemitism. Thank you so much for joining us.